Chapter 496, Empty Shell. Are you kidding me? Where's the money in the account? Did you secretly transfer the assets? Jiang Jin denied it. Boss Mo, you're accusing me. Every transaction in the company has a strict record and review. I can't do anything about such a large sum of money. Miss Lan asked me to do this. She said to give you this account as long as you become the president. I don't know why there isn't money inside. Sheng Li panicked. If the company's accounts have no money, it means that the company is on the verge of collapse. It'd be equivalent of him taking over a mess. He had spent so much effort to obtain the shares, but now he had taken over a mess. His peers would laugh their heads off if word were to spread. Anran! He clenched his fists and teeth grinding together. Boss Mo, there's a product that urgently needs an investment fund. Since you're the president, hurry and sign for it. But there isn't enough money in the account. Hurry and think of a way. The project partner is waiting to receive the money, Jiang Jin said. Sheng Li glanced at the contract and immediately flipped it over. The company doesn't have any money. Are you blind? Why did you sign the contract? He returned to Jin Rong's office angrily and knocked over everything on the table. He had taken over a shell company and couldn't use his own money to make up for it. Previously, he had asked Anran to transfer the company's money, thinking that she hadn't done so at all. Who knew that she really did? All the money was missing now. Anran and Jin Rong's corpses couldn't be found, and he was really afraid that they would suddenly reappear. At the Mo family, when Li Fang heard that her son's position was snatched, she immediately went to reason with old Mrs. Mo. Didn't we agree that my son would be the president? Why is he suddenly the president? Li Fang, things are unpredictable. You can't speak to old Mrs. Mo like that. Your tone is wrong. She is an elder, and you are her junior. How can you speak to her in such a tone? Nanny Wu was displeased by Li Fang's tone. Are you telling me what to do? Let me tell you, you're just a servant. You don't have the right to talk to me. Previously, we agreed that my son would be the president. Old Mrs. Mo, you're really good at taking drastic measures and secretly removing my son from the position. You're really something. Li Fang refused to budge. Old Mrs. Mo didn't care about her at all. Li Fang, I made your son the president to conceal the tracks back then. This situation was purely an accident. Do you think your son can sign a contract in his teens, negotiate with others, get a big deal and earn billions for the company? Do you think that he is Jin Rong? Since I let your son enter the Mo family, you've been ungrateful. At least he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothes in the future. Don't think about him becoming the president in the future. Sheng Li has become the new president of the company, and I only agreed because the knife was pressed to my neck. If it were your son, he wouldn't be so lucky. Li Fang was speechless. Miss Li, let me tell you something that I shouldn't. You should really be satisfied. Previously, old Mrs. Mo wasn't willing to accept you and the young master, but it is already a big concession now, and she is willing to make it known to the public. At the very least, he will be able to live with the name of the Mo family's young master in the future, and others will respect him. As for the matter of precedent, it wouldn't be too late to talk about it in the future. Li Fang narrowed her eyes and smiled again. Oh, Mrs. Mo, don't be angry. I was just saying I'm a straightforward person, and somebody suddenly took over my son's position. I have the right to ask, right? Since that's the case, I won't say anything else. I'll send my son for lessons. Li Fang thought about it and agreed. Previously, old Mrs. Mo refused to admit that she was willing to expose her son into the public. But now he was much better off than before. She really shouldn't ask for more. Nanny Wu and old Mrs. Mo were muttering after Li Fang left. Old Mrs. Mo, it's too scary just now. Sheng Li was going to kill someone. It seems that the fox's tail is finally showing. Old Mrs. Mo was shocked and a chill ran up her spine. He just said that you ruined his plan back then. What happened? Nanny Wu thought about it and recalled the scene at sea that night. I only came out to look for the young master and didn't see him. From what he said today, it could be that he wanted to kill the young master that night and was accidentally disrupted by me. That bastard, I raised him well and treated him like my own son, but he only wants to kill me. This is all the fault of that old man. When Mrs. Mo thought about the old man in heaven and felt hatred in her heart, she was also a victim and didn't want to accept him back then, but she convinced herself. She treated him like her biological son, but in the end, she received such unfair treatment. I wonder how Miss Anran and the young master are doing. Speaking of which, where did Mo Shengli find those two corpses? Did he really kill them? Nanny Wu was frightened. When Mrs. Mo turned to look at the urn containing Mo Jinrong's ashes, her heart filled with fear. Shengli is actually the boss of the foreign mafia organization. It can be seen now how violent he is. We'll have to hurry and find Jinrong. The young master is still missing, and there aren't any surveillance cameras on that path. Where can we find them? They should have come out by now if they had escaped into the mountains. Nanny Wu couldn't understand. It definitely won't work if we call the police now. They've confirmed Jinrong's death. Send someone to look for him again. There'll definitely be news. At this moment, the young housekeeper came in to report. Oh, Mrs. Mo, Mo-san is here. Hurry and invite him in. Well, Mrs. Mo treated Mo-san as a spy, and she had Mo-san search for the news alone these past few days. She didn't know if there was any results. Mo-san entered and spoke hurriedly. Well, Mrs. Mo, there isn't any news of the young master yet, but I did hear some unexpected news. Old Mrs. Mo suddenly perked up and asked attentively, Tell me, what news? Previously, young madam had the finance department transfer some money, which would have been in the lifeline of the entire company. However, it was secretly transferred, and even the young master didn't know. Shengli has taken over a shell of a company now, which is equivalent to cleaning up a mess, Mo-san explained. Well, Mrs. Mo was in a good mood. She didn't expect Anran to be so smart. Anran did that? That's great. Did she know that this would happen? I do not know the purpose of the young madam's actions, but if this continues, the company will definitely suffer. We will fall behind others because we can't take on any projects, and the market will definitely be divided up. If we still can't find the young master, the company will really go bankrupt, Mo-san reminded her. It doesn't matter. If the market is gone, we can still get it back one day. Since Shengli wants the company, he'll definitely solve the problem. Let's wait and see. Old Mrs. Mo smiled and said. Chapter 497, She was beaten. Yaxin wanted to become a solicitor and be worthy of the Tan Shan Lin. So she tried her best to enter the solicitor circle. Unfortunately, others didn't like her and didn't want to play with her, so Yaxin could only walk in the streets alone. Two people walked over. They found Yaxin familiar and asked boldly, Lan Yaxin? Yaxin was depressed and in a bad mood. She looked up to the two of them. Yang King? Gu Qi? Why are you guys here? Yaxin was at a loss. They had not seen each other for a long time, and she would definitely be mocked by the two of them when they saw her like this, so she turned to leave. Don't, Miss Lan, why are you running away from us? Yang King stepped forward to stop her. What's there to talk about? Yaxin spoke bluntly. Gu Qi glanced at her strangely. We're old classmates. Why don't we have anything to say? We don't mind that you accused us. It wasn't easy for us to meet. Let's go eat something good. Although Yaxin didn't think it was a good idea, they were the poor ones. She wouldn't be with them. It's alright. I just had a meal at a French restaurant and I'm not hungry at all. You can go home. Yaxin pretended to be very high class, but Yang King still looked down at her. She smiled. Yaxin, stop pretending. Actually, I know everything. Your parents and grandma are in jail. Are you happy that Anran suddenly died? What did you say? I don't have time to talk with you. My solicitor friends are waiting for me. Yaxin turned to leave. Solicitors? Yaxin, why are you still pretending now? I heard from my friends that you're now a mistress. Tell me, you were the school beauty back then, but now you've become something like this. It's your karma. You accused us so much trouble back then, but now you're even worse than us. You deserve it. Gu Qi smiled and said, What did you say? Who's the mistress? I think you're just jealous of me. Are you here to mock me because you're not as rich as me, and no man will like you? Yaxin smiled, suddenly bursting with a sense of superiority. What a joke. We have a job and a salary now. We don't have to be the mistresses to satisfy our vanity. You're the vain one. Do you feel guilty for framing us? Yang King asked. Guilty? Back then you helped me voluntarily. But yet you blamed me when something happened. Yaxin spoke disdainfully. We treated you as a friend, but you treated us as cannon fodder. We must have been blind, but we're very happy to see you in such a miserable state now. Just be a good mistress." Yang King sneered and brushed past her. "Who do you think you are?" Yaxin shouted from behind. Although she spoke harshly, she was very envious. Yaxin looked up towards the sky in a daze, her vision blurred with tears. She involuntarily glanced at the tea house. The figure reflected from the private room window on the top floor of the tea house looked very much like Ayn Rand. She wiped her tears and looked at the woman's back seriously. She looked extremely similar to Ayn Rand. Yaxin thought she was seeing things, so she hurriedly ran over to check, but she could only see the woman's back. She was wearing a veil, and she couldn't see her appearance clearly. She told herself that she might have seen it wrong. Ayn Rand was dead, she shouldn't be alive. In the car not far away, Ayn Rand took off her mask, revealing her exquisite side profile. "You didn't notice, right?" Ayn Rand smiled and said. Patty shook his head and looked into the direction. She didn't notice, but even if she did, she wouldn't be able to recognize you with you wearing a veil. Ayn Rand nodded, feeling relieved. She was treating someone in the private room upstairs, and coincidentally, Yaxin was downstairs and almost recognized her. "Let's go back now," Ayn Rand said. She had a new idea. Since Yaxin wanted her dead so badly, she wouldn't let her have her way. Back in the villa, Jinrong was struggling to get up. "Jinrong, what's wrong?" Ayn Rand hurried over to help him. "I want to go to the bathroom." Jinrong was a little embarrassed. "Let me help you." Ayn Rand placed her hand on Jinrong's arm and dragged him forward forcefully. This was Jinrong's first time placing his feet on the ground, and his legs were weak, unable to exert any strength. "Jinrong, don't give up. Try again," Ayn Rand encouraged him. Jinrong couldn't exert any strength at all, and suspected that his legs were paralyzed. He pounded his leg with all his might. "Jinrong, what are you doing?" Ayn Rand cried as her heart ached. "I'm useless. Don't look at me," Jinrong shouted. "Jinrong, pull yourself together." Ayn Rand pulled him away to try and stand on the ground. "I'm useless. Why do you care? I can't stand up anymore." Jinrong slapped his leg hard. "You can stand. You have to believe in yourself," Ayn Rand shouted at him. Everyone behind her rushed over to have a look. Jinrong looked at the many people watching him. He had always been proud. So how could he endure being stared at like this? "You're all here to make a fool out of me. Get lost." Jinrong had completely broken down. His eyes were bloodshot, and he couldn't accept others' sympathetic gazes. "Jinrong, are you still a man? What are you thinking?" Kong Ting couldn't bear to watch as she asked. "I can't even stand. What kind of man am I?" Jinrong cried. "These things are only temporary. You've been sleeping in bed for so long, of course you can't stand up. Hurry up and recover. Do you think we saved you for nothing? For your sake, Boss goes out to work every day to earn money to buy valuable materials for you and to research medicine for you. We've spent hundreds of millions now, but you're still the same. Are you worthy of her?" Kong Ting was furious. She felt that Jinrong had let Ayn Rand down. "Jinrong, let's get up." Ayn Rand patiently helped him up again. Jinrong pushed her away, and her head hit the corner of the table, causing blood to flow. "Jinrong, are you crazy? Boss treated you so well, but you still hit her?" Skinny couldn't take it anymore and punched him. "Ayn Rand, let's get a divorce," Jinrong suddenly spoke. Ayn Rand struggled to get up from the ground and slapped Jinrong. You want a divorce just like that? Have you thought about me? Who did I work so hard for? I know you're doing it to save me, but I don't blame you. I wouldn't agree to a divorce even if you wanted me to. Why should I get a divorce?" Ayn Rand cried. Chapter 498, Confession. Jinrong looked up with tears in his eyes, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth as he said, "You won't end up having a good life with me. It's all because of me. You were threatened by the Grim Reaper time and time again. It's my fault. It's not your fault. If you hadn't saved me this time, I would have died. I told you. I owe you. I deserve this. I don't blame you." Ayn Rand covered the wound on her forehead and forced herself to pull Jinrong. "Boss, let me stop the bleeding first." Kong Ting brought over the first aid kit and smiled. Fatty and the others carried Jinrong to bed. "Mo Jinrong, Boss is doing this for you. Recently, she hasn't been eating well or sleeping well. If you fight with Boss again, I'll break your legs, Fatty threatened him. Kong Ting bandaged Ayn Rand's wound and looked at Jinrong angrily. Alright, you guys can leave first. Ayn Rand spoke to the people behind her. After everyone left, Ayn Rand continued to smile at Jinrong. Jinrong, don't worry, you'll get better. There is the most professional equipment here, and you can have rehabilitation training every day. Jinrong looked at the wound on her friend and cried. Ayn Rand, I'm sorry, I let you down. Does it hurt? He asked softly. It doesn't hurt. And Jinrong, I'm fine. But you can't abandon me in the future. You're not allowed to mention the subject of divorce again, Ayn Rand warned. Jinrong sighed, lamenting his misfortune, but then smiled. He had such a good wife. Ayn Rand, can you tell me what happened? What is this place? Ayn Rand sat down and spoke slowly. You remember the villa I asked you for when we got married? This is the house you gave me, and I used it as a stronghold. These are my subordinates. The one who beat you just now was Skinny, the one beside him was Fatty, and the one treating you was Kong Ting. And beside her was her brother, Kong Taiyan. There are still many people that you can slowly get to know. This is my secret stronghold. No one knows about it. You can stay here without worry. Ayn Rand wiped the blood from the corner of Jinrong's mouth and placed an ice pack on him. They said that you wake up early and work late every day. What are you doing? It's nothing. Ayn Rand was a little unwilling to answer. Ayn Rand, actually, I know even if you don't say anything. I haven't been in a complete coma in these past few days. I heard everything you said. Are you Zero? Jinrong guessed. He had suspected it for a long time, but there was still no evidence. Now it seemed that she was indeed Zero. How did you know? Ayn Rand was a little surprised. She didn't even seem to mention it. Jinrong smiled. I guessed it. You've been hypnotizing people every day these past few days, right? It's been hard on you. I know that you were reborn, so I can understand what you said to Yaxin. And then smiled with tears in her eyes. You believe me? Jinrong nodded and forced a smile. I told you, I believe everything you say. I was a little surprised. It seems that you weren't that friendly to me in our past life, right? Ayn Rand wiped her tears and choked. I'm sorry. I haven't had the chance to apologize to you yet. In the past, I always treated your kindness as a conspiracy. I know that you were doing for my sake, but I treated your kindness as ill intent. I'm sorry. She laid on Jinrong and cried. Why are you crying? It seems like you have to pay me back for the rest of your life. Jinrong laughed. You're still laughing? Don't you hate me? You lost your life because of me. It's my fault for being so stupid. Ayn Rand reproached herself. To me, of the past life is already death, and I haven't experienced it either. Besides, it wouldn't hurt to die under a peony flower, Jinrong said. How can you still joke? Do you really not hate me? Ayn Rand asked seriously. I don't. Why would I hate you? It's just a pity that I didn't protect you well. Jinrong was regretful. In this lifetime, he still couldn't protect his woman and ended up in such a state. Jinrong, thank you. Don't be discouraged. As long as you do the rehabilitation well, you'll get better. Kong Ting is already making plans for you, so don't worry. Ayn Rand smiled. How's Grandma been? She must be upset that I'm not around. Jinrong was worried. Don't worry, Grandma is very shrewd. She's currently under house arrest by Shang Li, so there shouldn't be any problems. Although Shang Li has become the president of the Mo Corporation. He is only the president of a shell company. I have transferred the money to another account. Jinrong stared at her intently and smiled. My wife is so smart, but with Shang Li's personality, he probably won't give up. That's why I have to hurry up and earn money to buy the Mo Corporation. It's all your fault for making the Mo Corporation so successful. I can't even afford it right now. And I teased him. You're blaming me? It was the first time Jinrong had such a reason. It's not your fault. Ayn Rand continued to massage him as she spoke. Outside, Kong Ting came up with a watch and spoke angrily. The plan is ready, boss. Kong Ting felt bad for her boss. Ayn Rand was beautiful and had great abilities. How could she marry such a man? Kong Ting, I'm sorry about just now. Jinrong lowered his head and apologized. Jinrong, I'm not criticizing you, but you were defeated by such a small setback. You're really something. Kong Ting didn't even want to look at him. It's all my fault. Jinrong lowered his head and said apologetically. Alright, Kong Ting, let's not talk about him. Isn't the class a little too diligent? Anne looked at the plan in her hand and frowned. Don't some people want to get better soon? They need some more practice, she said, glancing at Jinrong angrily. Jinrong smiled and said, That's alright, I can do it, Ayn Rand. Kong Ting left without a word. Outside, Kong Ting went over to Skinny and chatted with him while munching on melon seeds. Why do you think Boss likes Mo Jinrong so much? Boss has a good figure, good appearance, and ability. We all know that. How did such an outstanding girl fall into the trap? Skinny drank his beer in confusion. Who knows what Boss is thinking? Jinrong isn't as godly as rumors say. Kong Ting pursed her lips. Huh. The flower is stuck with a cockroach. Skinny shook his head and sighed. Who's the flower and who's the cockroach? Ayn Rand asked as she came out. Boss, no one. Skinny immediately stood up and said, Jinrong is just upset. Don't blame him. Ayn Rand smiled and said, but Skinny found Jinrong unreliable. Boss, I'm not criticizing you, but why did you fall for him? You're so outstanding. You shouldn't have fallen for him. Chapter 499, Ghost. Jinrong is pretty good. He's handsome and rich. Most importantly, his kidneys are good. Ayn Rand smiled and said, Skinny almost spat out his beer. Everyone has skinnies. He spoke disdainfully. Boss, you mean he used 2 hours for a session? Kong Ting smelled the gossip and stretched out 2 fingers with a smile. Ayn Rand didn't speak. Her face flushed with embarrassment. What are you talking about? Kong Ting looked at Skinny with disgust. It would only take him half an hour with his skinny build. Can you even do it? She turned to look at Skinny and asked. Skinny stammered and couldn't say anything, so Kong Ting left in disgust. At night, Jinrong wanted to go out of bed to go to the bathroom when he suddenly heard a voice outside. He thought it was someone and wanted to get out, but he couldn't move at all. Who is it? Jinrong shouted. Shh, it's me. Ayn Rand walked in with a disheveled hair, shocking Jinrong. It's you? Why are you out in the middle of the night? Who are you trying to scare? Jinrong was horrified. I saw Yaxin today. I have a good idea. Wait for me to come home. She had heavy makeup on her face, and it was pale. There was also a white robe in her bag. She was going to scare Yaxin to death today. Be careful, Jinrong reminded her softly. Got it. Go to bed and wait for me. Ayn Rand tiptoed out painfully. Meanwhile, Yaxin was sleeping soundly at home when Old Wang quietly took a wire from outside and broke the lock. He sneaked into Yaxin's room and pushed her down. Who are you? Yaxin screamed. She opened her eyes and saw that it was Old Wang. What are you doing? Yaxin was furious. Oh, my dear Yaxin, do you think you can get rid of me? Let me tell you, you'll never get rid of me. Old Wang grabbed Yaxin tightly. Halfway through, Ayn Rand wanted to break in, but saw that the door was ajar, and she sneaked in while there was no one around. She changed her clothes and touched up her makeup. Just as she was about to enter Yaxin's room, she heard indecent voices coming from that door. She stuck her head out and saw Yaxin and Old Wang on the bed. She didn't think too much about it and deliberately made some noise to attract their attention. Who? Old Wang was in a good mood and looked past to see that there was no one there. Ayn Rand broke some teacups and bowls outside. Who? Old Wang called out again, but there was still no one. He got out of bed impatiently to see who interrupted his fun. The room was dark and there was no response from the lights. He was a little scared. Who is it? Old Wang didn't dare to walk forward. He straightened his clothes and looked around vigilantly. Old Wang. Ayn Rand held a microphone that was neither loud nor soft. Her voice echoed throughout the room, filling the room with a horrifying atmosphere. Old Wang was frightened out of his wits. He turned around and saw that there was no one around, so he wondered if Yaxin was messing with him. Yaxin, you brat, you dare to trick me? He cursed on the way back. Yaxin wore her clothes in her room, not knowing what happened. Old Wang. The strange voice sounded again. Old Wang was scared and suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He turned his head. Ayn Rand was looking down at him from behind. Ayn Rand, I didn't mean it. You don't look for me. Old Wang was frightened and wanted to run. Old Wang, you kidnapped me. Anran stood on the sofa and spoke in a deep voice. The entire room was cold. "It's not me. Don't look for me. Yaxin told me to do it. It's her. Why aren't you looking for her? Ghost!" Old Wang ran out without stopping. Yaxin hid at the door, listening to the commotion outside. She didn't believe in ghosts or gods, so she opened the door boldly, and Anran's face was staring at her from the door. "Anran! Ghost! There really is a ghost!" Yaxin fell to the ground in fright. "Yaxin, I'll find you even if I die. Are you doing well?" Anran asked slowly, and the voice in the microphone elongated. "I'm not good. Hurry and leave. Hurry!" Yaxin treated it as a nightmare and waved her hands in front of her with her eyes closed. "Yaxin, it's time for retribution for the bad things you did to me. Go to hell with me." She reached out to grab Yaxin, but Yaxin cleverly closed the door. Anran was blocked outside. She couldn't give up and continued. "Yaxin, go to hell with me." She pushed the door. Yaxin was silent at the door, sweating from fright. "No, hurry and leave. Don't look for me," Yaxin cried. "You harmed me. Who else should I look for? Come out. Go to hell," Anran continued. "It's not me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Don't look for me. I'm just jealous of you. It's all my fault," Yaxin continued. She kowtowed and apologized repeatedly. "Then that's why you killed me? I'm taking you with me today. This is a mission from the depths of hell." Anran laughed as she spoke. "Don't take me away, please. I'm sorry." Yaxin continued to hide inside. Anran had no choice but to use her killer move. She took out a stainless steel 5-fingered glove and punched Yaxin's door. Yaxin thought that Anran was really using her hand before, but now she believed it even more. She retreated repeatedly, and when she saw Anran's terrifying eyes behind the door, Yaxin fainted from fright. Anran opened the door gently and saw Yaxin lying on the ground. She kicked her twice and left. The next day, Yaxin woke up from the ground. She vaguely remembered what happened last night and thought it was a dream. But when she saw herself sleeping on the ground with 2 big holes on the door, she was dumbfounded. Anran's ghost is back? She was scared to death. She hurriedly packed her things and wanted to leave. At this moment, she was startled by Tan Shilin's call. "Tan Shilin, hurry up and save me. I saw Anran's ghost." Yaxin shouted in fear. "What are you talking about? Ghost? How is that possible?" Tan Shilin obviously didn't believe in this nonsense. "I really saw it. It was Anran's ghost. She was dressed in white, and her face was pale and scary. She tore down my door with her bare hands. Hurry. I can't stay here anymore. I'm leaving. There was a ghost," Yaxin said while still screaming. "What are you saying? Yaxin, are you upset? Have a good rest, and I'll find you another day," Tan Shilin said. "No, I really saw her. I'm not staying here. I'm moving." Yaxin was frightened and panicked. She had to leave. She hung up and hurriedly packed her things. Chapter 500, he broke down. Yaxin saw the shadows of ghosts in every room and didn't dare to stay in the house anymore. She took some clothes, stuffed them into her suitcase, took her bag, and hurried out the door. Her only hope now was to find Tan Shilin. "What's wrong with you? What do you want from me?" Yaxin panicked like a frightened cat and threw herself into Tan Shilin's arms with her suitcase. Tan Shilin pushed her aside. After all, they were outside the house. If his father saw them, he would scold them again. "There's really a ghost. She really appeared in my house last night, and there is a really big hole in the door. I didn't lie to you. Believe me. She really came back." Yaxin was like a mentally ill person. Her eyes were soulless, and she seemed especially nervous. "If you don't do anything wrong, you won't have to be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night. Look at you now. Don't you brag to others back then? Why are you so scared now? Forget it. I'll rent an apartment for you outside, and you can stay there temporarily. Stay in the apartment and give birth to a child for me. Promise you everything will be all right." Tan Shilin hugged Yaxin and took her to the apartment. Meanwhile, in the villa, Jinrong was actively doing rehabilitation. Anran had been busy the entire night and had just returned from work early in the morning. "Jinrong, how do you feel?" She smiled. "I'm alright, but I can't exert any energy in my legs and I'm limping. I'm afraid that I'm going to be crippled." Jinrong held the handle of the side and spoke sadly. He felt weaker and weaker. He couldn't feel his legs and couldn't even walk properly. He was limping like a cripple. Anran supported him and comforted him. Don't be anxious. Take your time. There's still time. Let me tell you something fun. Last night, Yaxin was so scared to death by me. She's probably hiding in bed crying. How old are you to be so mischievous? Yaxin would be frightened if she saw you. Jinrong forced a smile. Of course, she knelt down and kowtowed to me yesterday, begging me to forgive her in her dreams. At the moment, Maddie entered. Boss, Yaxin carried her suitcase out in the early morning. She seems to have gone to find Tan Shilin. Jinrong was slightly taken aback. She related to that guy? I knew it a long time ago. I just didn't tell you. I went over in the middle of the night and found her in the room with old Wang. They were doing it, and I frightened them by pretending to be a ghost, Anran explained. I was very satisfied with his results with Yaxin, but I'm not with Sheng Li. After hearing the company was an empty shell after he acquired the shares, he decided to sell the company and apply for bankruptcy protection. He might even want a fortune and escape. Patty guessed. What did you say? Damn it, I'm going to see him. Jinrong was a little agitated. He had just taken a step when he fell limp to the ground. He didn't give up but crawled forward with all his might, his face flushed with anger. Jinrong, don't be anxious. You haven't recovered yet. It won't do you any good if you go out like this now. Anran persuaded him at the side. I don't care. My grandma's already imprisoned by him, and now he wants to sell the company? That's the blood, sweat, and tears of my father and grandfather. How could they sell it just like that? Jinrong is clearly agitated. Jinrong, listen to me first. We have to make a plan while you're injured. It'll take some time for him to apply for bankruptcy protection and sell the company. We can take this opportunity to train our bodies and come up with a plan. Sheng Li didn't find our corpses and used 2 fake corpses to represent us. That means that he's trying his best to find our corpses. If you appear now and fall into that trap, we won't really have a chance. Listen to me first and train your body well. We'll discuss the rest later. Anran comforted him carefully. Jinrong slapped his disappointing legs hard, wondering if he could still stand. He couldn't even feel his legs, let alone take revenge. Jinrong's confidence was crushing again. Anran knelt down, placed her hands on his cheek, and looked straight at him. Jinrong, listen to me. I won't allow you to give up on yourself like this again. You can definitely stand up. You can't be despised by others. Anran seemed very solemn at the moment, and Jinrong looked straight at her. Fatty glanced at the man on the ground. No, Jinrong, if you're a man, stand up and don't cry on the ground like a child. Boss woke up early and worked late for you every day, but you're still like this? Aren't you letting her down? Aren't you just unable to stand up for a short period of time? Did you have to give up on yourself like this? Boss must be blind to follow you. Aren't you an embarrassment to let a woman take care of you all day? Fatty was displeased to see him like this. Fatty, what are you saying? Shut up. Anran was furious. Jinrong wiped his tears and struggled to stand up. He's right. I can't do this anymore. Anran, I will definitely stand up. I don't need you to take care of me. Jinrong climbed on the treadmill step by step, supporting himself with both hands on the railing as he stood up little by little. I can do it. I want revenge, Jinrong said furiously. Anran was upset to see him like this, but this was the reality, and Jinrong had to accept it. Jinrong, you can do it. Good luck. Jinrong took the first step with difficulty, walking on the solo treadmill. Suddenly, his legs went limp and he fell into it. He didn't give up and struggled to stand up again. Anran wanted to walk over to help him, but she restrained herself. What Jinrong needed was self-confidence and independence. At the Qin family, Qin Taiyan had lost his father and his sister wasn't by his side, so he could only raise the Qin family's flag alone. However, Qin Taiyan could only use the rules to control the provocations and distrust of his uncles. He had just called for a meeting and everyone was present except Hugh Cunhai. Why isn't Uncle Hugh here yet? Including the shareholders' meeting last time, this would be the second time he held a meeting. The crowd muttered below quietly. Everyone feel free to speak your mind, don't gossip below. Qin Taiyan shouted. The conference room fell silent. Chapter 501, Hugh Cunhai. A leisurely whistle sounded from outside. Hugh and I walked in, pushed the door open leisurely, and smiled. Everyone is here. I'm the only one left. I'm sorry, the journey was a little long. Hugh and I staggered to a seat, completely ignoring Kin Tai-en. Uncle Hugh, today is the second time I've called a meeting. Please dress up next time. Can you wipe the lipstick mark on your neck now? Kin Tai-en reminded him deliberately. Hugh and I looked at his collar awkwardly. Sorry, my wife imprinted in me before I came. I'll wipe it off now. He wiped the lipstick mark off his collar and smiled. Uncle Hugh, I think I made myself clear in the last meeting. There's no such thing as being late or leaving the company early. Did you ignore my words? I've gotten someone to paste the company's new rules on the wall. I think Uncle Hugh knows about it. Today you openly violated the company's rules. Do you not respect me, the new president? Kin Tai-en spoke solemnly. Hugh Kin-hai couldn't care about Kin Tai-en at all. He was just a greenhorn and couldn't do anything to him. Those new rules were just random process to him, and he didn't care about them at all. He lived like this in the company all these years and hadn't seen the previous president Kin say anything. He smiled and said, I'll be careful next time. Wasn't there a traffic jam just now? Don't worry, I'll get the driver to pick a road that isn't congested next time. That's all, let's have the meeting. Hugh Kin-hai smiled, wanting to brush this matter aside. Uncle Hugh, I remember that you live on the east side of the second ring road. The company is only about 1,000 meters away from your address, and it only takes 20 minutes to walk here. Besides, it's an even-numbered day, and the number of cars on the road are limited. Your car can only be driven on odd-numbered days. Where did you come from today? Kin Tai-en smiled. Hugh Kin-hai was at a loss for words. I got a new car and can drive during the even day now. There was a car accident on the way here, so I'm a little late because the road had been sealed. Kin Tai-en nodded and continued, Is that so? I'll get someone to ask and see if there was really a car accident. Even if there was a car accident, you could have just gotten out and walked over. After all, it's only a few minutes away. I wonder if Uncle Hugh was making out with Auntie Hugh in the car or with another woman. Hugh Kin-hai was a little impatient. What has gotten into you? Hurry up and have the meeting. Don't talk about nonsense. This is my private matter. It has nothing to do with me. But because of it, you're delayed your work and my management. This has a lot to do with me. Don't blame me for being heartless if you ignore my words. Kin Tai-en spoke bluntly. What can you do to me, Kin Tai-en? If it weren't for old Master Kin, I wouldn't have come to your lousy meeting. Do you think everyone is silent because they support you? Do you think they agree with you to be the president? Let me tell you, I'll be the first to object. Who do you think you are? Everyone has given in to you and respected you as the president. I'm not convinced. Even the previous President Kin was around. He wanted to nurture you into the president. I had no objections because you were his son. But previously, President Kin died mysteriously and didn't announce to anyone that you were the heir. You didn't make any contributions, so how could we accept you? You came up with lousy rules to suppress and restrain us. I have been in the company for almost 10 years. I moved here with the company, and this is how I lived all these years. I haven't seen your father have any objections towards me, but look at you. You want to bare your teeth at me before your fur is fully grown? Do you think that this company belongs to the Kin family alone? No way. Hugh Kin-hai spoke bluntly. Kin Tai-en suppressed his anger in his heart and didn't let it out immediately. He only nodded and smiled. I respect you, and I call you Uncle Hugh. Firstly, I'm very grateful that you have fought along my dad all these years. My dad didn't scold you because he was embarrassed to scold you. After all, you're an old employee of the company who has been in the company for so many years. My dad has passed away, so I know what he can't do. Since you've been so rude to me, there's no need for me to be polite to you. After all, so many years in the company, I have seen you either bullying your female subordinates or idling around the company. Actually, after so many years, you've earned enough. It's time to retire. Do you want me to fire you or do you want to resign? Uncle Hugh, you can decide for yourself. Hugh Kin-hai was even more upset when he heard that he was going to be fired. Who do you think you are? How dare you remove me from my position? Your dad and I worked together for so many years. I almost became one with the company. And now you want to fire me? Your dad didn't say anything, so what right do you have to dismiss me? I'm old. So what's wrong with being a bystander in the company? Tell your dad to come and tell me personally if you want to remove me from my position. A young boy like you doesn't have the right to call the shots here. Kin Cyan threw the documents in his hand on the table and looked at him angrily. Uncle Hugh, since you're unwilling to resign, don't blame me for being rude. The company has its own system, and this isn't a place for you to slack off. If you don't want to work, get lost. The system isn't just for show. Everyone has to follow the company's rules. If you don't want to, get out immediately. There are so many people who want to become a shareholder, Uncle Hugh. You'll be scared to death if my dad comes to talk to you personally. Let me give you a piece of advice. He who understands the time is a wise man. It's best to resign obediently, otherwise it wouldn't look good. When Hugh Kinhai saw that the kid was serious, he immediately softened and smiled. Kin Cyan, don't be angry. I was just joking with you. You know that I like to joke, so don't take it seriously. I won't be late in the future. I'm an old employee in company after all. If you want to fire me, it'll hurt many people. Kin Cyan wasn't joking with him. His expression was very solemn. Uncle Hugh, I'm not joking with you. Everything I said just now is from the bottom of my heart. Are you going to resign, or do you want me to fire you? You can choose. These are the family rules, and there are national laws. If I don't fire you today, they won't obey me. Uncle Hugh, please understand. Hugh Kinhai was finally furious. Understand? Ha! You're firing me and you want me to understand you? Who do you think you are? No one can fire me. Kin Cyan picked up his phone and called for security. Drag this lunatic out. You're fired. Everyone took a deep breath and fell silent. Chapter 502, Purchasing the Kin Corporation. How can I take care of you when you're all acting like you're dead? All of you have become mute at the moment I'm in trouble. Let me tell you, my outcome today is the same as yours in the future. Hugh Kinhai's arrogant voice was grow further and further away from the conference room. As you can see in the future, if anyone doesn't want to behave, they'll end up just like him. Of course, I'll need everyone's help since I'm new. But I won't cause any pressure on anyone. There are rewards and punishments, as you can see. In the future, if anyone does well, there's no need to look for me. Just look for the rewards and punishment list. That'll be in the finance department to get a reward. If you don't do well, then don't blame me for being heartless. I'm new and everyone might look down on me. I understand this. The reason I wanted to hold this meeting today is to take over the Mo family's market. Mo Jinron took over most of the wrong city while he was in office. Now that he isn't around, the market is pretty empty. Besides, there's news from what Sheng Li is going to sell the company. This is a good opportunity for us to snatch up the available market. I wonder if anyone has any good ideas. Kin Cyan smiled. We all have our own ideas. The Mo family has always monopolized the wrong city market, and their territory as the food processing industry is still very large. Why don't we swallow the food market and snatch his old customers? The Kin family has just moved over, and although we have some results, it isn't enough. In my opinion, the Mo family's fashion industry is excellent. That designer Q Cha brought them a lot of profits. I think poaching that designer over is an important matter. After Hugh Kinhai left, everyone felt insecure of the position and quickly expressed their opinions. Kin Cyan smiled and spoke directly. Everyone's ideas are good, but I want to take over the entire Mo family's company and the market. What do you think? Many people were surprised by Kin Cyan's idea. Although the Kin family was big, it was comparable to the Mo family. The two companies were neck and neck, had to devour each other to advance. They weren't afraid of not being full, they were afraid of bursting from being too full. The Kin family had a lot of influence abroad, but not in this country. The Mo family had rich resources and connections, so it would be a big price to obtain it. Boss Kin, this idea is a little risky. The Mo family's resources and connections are good, but it's too big. I'm afraid our Kin family's funds can't keep up with it. If anything goes wrong, we'll be the target of acquisition. After careful consideration, he raised his idea. He had been in the Kin family for so many years, and old Master Kin was a reliable person. He would always consider the pros and cons before making a decision, but his son was too radical and impulsive. I thought about Uncle Zhou's worries, but the Mo family is a juicy piece of meat that everyone wants to take a bite in. If we don't hurry and take it down, I'm afraid that we won't have a chance. As for the funds, I think we can get a loan from the bank. The Kin family isn't very powerful right now, but previously my father had interacted with the presidents of several banks and had a good relationship with them. It should still be possible for us to get a loan. The Mo family has many stores and a wide sales channel. If we swallow it, We won't have to worry about not being able to become number one in the world. I have discussed this with Sheng Li. In my opinion, he has given up on the current crisis. It won't be easy for us to talk about the acquisition with him. Qin Taiyan's plan was thorough, and he had thought about it in a long time. The Mo family and the Qin family had formed a deep grudge. He made this decision not just for his selfish reasons, but more importantly for the development of the Qin family. I heard about it too. We have an insider news that Mo Corporation is now an empty shell. If such a big company becomes an empty shell, there will definitely be big debt for us to bear. But I support Boss Qin's decision. It's not too large of a risk. Sun Liang said. Qin Taiyan finally smiled. After everyone agreed he was going to start the acquisition plan. He would have avenged his father after the acquisition was complete. After all, if it weren't for Jinrong, his father wouldn't have been angered to death by his sister. Meanwhile, Keecha hid in the home every day and didn't go to work. She hugged Ayn Rand's photos in a daze and drank alone. Ayn Rand gave her this villa. When she was in a daze and lonely, Ayn Rand helped her by her side. Half of Keecha's spiritual substance was gone now that Ayn Rand was dead. Ayn Rand, why did you leave me behind? Why didn't you care about me? Keecha laid alone on the ground, surrounded by wine bottles. She was no longer the happy girl she once was. There were countless missed calls from Zhao Han, but she hadn't seen any of them. She didn't want to hear comforting words. And then I didn't even see you one last time, and you abandoned me. You really value your lover over your friend. Keecha cried as she drank the beer in her hand. Zhao Han hadn't seen Keecha in days. He thought that she must be very sad, so he drove over to her house. The door was tightly shut, and there wasn't a trace of life. There was a ninth light. He came after Ayn Rand's accident, but the door was always shut tightly. He knew that Keecha was inside, but he couldn't do anything about it. He mustered up his courage, walked forward again, and knocked. Keecha, I know you're inside. Open the door to see me. Keecha was working in the living room when she heard the noise outside. She threw the empty bottle at the door impatiently. The sound of the broken bottle made Zhao Han certain that she was still alive. I don't want to see you. Leave. Ayn Rand is dead. She died with Jinrong. You want to stay with me? We'll end up like that, too. Leave. Keecha cried, looking drunk while swaying from side to side. She struggled to her feet and walked to the door, leaning against it with a bottle of beer in her hand. What are you saying? Ayn Rand and Jinrong passed away and we're both upset. You can't give up on yourself. Ayn Rand wouldn't like you like this. So what if she wouldn't like him? Can she stand up and scold me? Hurry up and leave and don't disturb my drinking, Keecha said angrily. Zhao Han called the locksmith when he knew that the persuasion was useless. Soon the door was open. Keecha was grabbed by Zhao Han from behind the door. Let go of me! Let go of me! Keecha struggled. Zhao Han snatched the bottle from Keecha's hand and carried her upstairs. Keecha, you're not allowed to drink anymore. If Ayn Rand was here, she'd definitely let me drink. You're a bad person, Keecha cried and said. You picked the lock, I'm going to sue you, stupid Zhao Han. Keecha's face was flushed and she looked a little cute. Chapter 503 Acquisition. Zhao Han caressed her head gently. Keecha, Ayn Rand passed away. You have to live well, he whispered softly in her ear. I don't want to. She's not dead at all, Keecha replied. Zhao Han helped her take off her shoes, covered her with a blanket, and sat beside her to protect her. After Keecha fell asleep, Zhao Han quietly went downstairs to clean up the trash in the living room. The living room was filled with photos of her and Ayn Rand. In order to prevent her missing her, Zhao Han kept everything related to Ayn Rand. After Sheng Li occupied the company's business stagnated and plummeted in all aspects, but he didn't care about all that. He had been looking for companies to acquire it, and many people showed strong interest in it, but Sheng Li wasn't satisfied with the price. The Mo Corporation has operated for so many years and has a strong foundation. There's no way they can buy our company with just a few billion yuan. Sheng Li chased them away, the last group of people who wanted to buy it. Qin Taiyan appeared at the Mo Corporation's door again. You're here to collect our debts again? I said I would give it to you in a few days. You don't have to do this, coming over to collect your debts every day. Sheng Li was a little dissatisfied. Qin Taiyan smiled, indicating that he didn't care about the money. Boss Mo, I believe I told you last time that I'm more than willing to acquire the Mo family's company. I know that you're in a terrible fix looking for a buyer. I mentioned this to you last time. Have you considered it? Shang Li was shocked. He had forgotten about it. Boss Qin, are you really going to acquire the Mo Corporation? I hope you aren't just taking revenge, but you really just want to acquire it. Shang Li was afraid that Qin Taiyan would always be a vengeful heart and it wouldn't be worth if something went wrong. To Qin Taiyan, Shang Li was his enemy and the culprit who bullied his sister. However, it wasn't time for revenge yet, so he had to endure it. You don't have to worry about it. Since we still have to acquire the Mo Corporation is part of our corporation. The Kan family will absorb the resources, so don't worry about the price. I'll definitely let it be fair. We can discuss the conditions. Qin Taiyan smiled. He looked serious, but Shang Li didn't believe him. After that, the Mo family had a long-standing grudge with the Qin Taiyan, and you couldn't be sure what he was thinking. I'll think about it. After all, it's a big deal. Shang Li smiled and brushed it off. I hope you won't find anyone else to discuss the acquisition of the company with. I have made many preparations to accept the company. Qin Taiyan smiled and reminded him. I don't own this company alone. There's still Mrs. Mo at home. I'll discuss it with her when I'm back, Shang Li said. He wanted to ask something but swallowed his words. Seeing his hesitant expression, Qin Taiyan spoke first. Are you asking about my sister? Since you're separated, don't provoke her anymore. She's doing very well. And the two of you are not in the same place at all. Qin Taiyan warned and continued speaking. Don't pretend to care about her. My sister is naive and single-minded. Hatred blinded her and she couldn't differentiate between good and bad, which led to my dad's death. You also are involved in my dad's death. But don't worry. I definitely don't have any selfish motives in acquiring the Mo Corporation. You can be assured about that. Qin Taiyan had left the Mo Corporation after that. Back at home, Shang Li informed old Mrs. Mo about the acquisition. Old Mrs. Mo was so agitated that she almost fainted. Nanny Wu hurried to give her a stabilizing pill. She laid on the bed, panting. Nanny Wu was supporting her, and she pointed to Shang Li with trembling hands. You bastard, that's your father's life's work. How can you sell it just like that? Are you letting your father down? Shang Li didn't feel much about old Mrs. Mo's insults. He stood in front of her with hands in a pocket and smiled nonchalantly. Mom, I don't have a deep relationship with Dad. I just took over the company half a year ago anyway. I was abandoned in the countryside since I was a child. Does he know how miserable my mom was when she died? Even though he brought me into the city to stay with you and let me enjoy this luxurious life, I wasn't happy at all. I didn't expect my mom to die so miserably and in that dilapidated house in the countryside. I couldn't even swallow my food, but you and your precious sons are enjoying everything my dad has. You are enjoying my mom's blood-stained steamed buns and stepping on her corpse to enjoy yourself. Do you think that is reasonable? After my dad established a company, he never mentioned my mom again. Why should I have feelings for the rise and fall of his company? Old Mrs. Mo finally understood what an ingrate he was. So you've been taking revenge on me? You're doing all this for me? I think I've treated you well. I don't know what made you hate me and your father so much. Why are you doing this? Shang Li smiled, tears appearing in his eyes. Why? You should be asking yourself why. Because my mom died in such a dilapidated house. You and my father gave birth to 2 sons. My arrival seems to have been added as an outsider to your family. I know you never liked me. You are always so biased towards your 2 sons. When you were young, you would think your sons first. Whenever you had something good, I would have to give them no matter what. In the end, there would always be one sentence, because I am the older one. I am their brother. Others are always mocking me in private as the illegitimate child. I never dared to speak, even when I was bullied. It is all because of you. Shang Li wiped his tears and continued speaking. I remember when second brother was sick. You took care of him day and night. I couldn't even have dinner and could only eat leftovers and sour rice. But your son could eat hot braised pork. Why? It's because of you and your sons. If it weren't for you, my dad wouldn't have abandoned my mom. This company was established because my dad married you, which made his career soar. If my mom hadn't died, do you think I would have come to such a lousy place? Old Mrs. Mo was surprised to hear this. She had always treated him as her biological son. Even though she knew that she had been deceived, she didn't blame it at all. After all, children were the most innocent. She was indeed biased sometimes. Her son was a little weaker when he was sickly. She didn't expect Sheng Li to have thought about it when he was younger. Chapter 504, Old Mrs. Mo is critical. I was biased towards my sons because they were weak and sickly when they were young. I wanted them to eat better since your health was better. I didn't mind it too much. In fact, I have always treated you as my biological son and definitely didn't have any bias. I am also a victim. Back then, I didn't know that your dad and your mom had you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married your dad. Your dad didn't tell me, so I didn't know about you. You only came after I gave birth to my second child. How could you become so extreme now? I have never thought of you that way. I didn't expect you to hate me so much. Your mom has nothing to do with me, so you're here to take revenge on me. Were you behind Jin Rong's incident? Old Mrs. Mo finally saw Sheng Li's true colors. So what if it was me? I was the one who sent someone to kill him. I was the one who was behind what happened to Mo Ying. More than 10 years ago, you lost your granddaughter, and more than 10 years later, you lost your grandson. You're old, you don't have any children to support you, and now you don't even have a son to show filial respect to you. Your life is so much worse than mine. Sheng Li was overjoyed. He was being honest because he wasn't afraid that old Mrs. Mo would report him. He wanted her to become even more upset so he could vent his hatred. Are you crazy? Ying'er was your niece. She was innocent, carefree, and treated you well. Why did you hurt her? If you hated me, you could have just taken revenge on me alone. Why did you let them suffer in my place? When Mrs. Mo's tears fell constantly, she patted her chest, feeling extremely pained. Sheng Li was overjoyed to see Mrs. Mo like this. To be honest, I really didn't want to kill her. She was the first person I killed. She was lively, beautiful, and generous. She did have the appearance of a young lady, but unfortunately she ruined my plan. The first day she boarded the plane was the day I planned to deal with Jin Rong. She knew my plan. I don't know if she heard it or not, but I'm not willing to let anyone go. Jin Rong was lucky to survive, as Ying'er died for him. On the day of the storm, Nanny Wu, you saved him again. He had too many benefactors in his life and was too lucky. Or rather, he was destined to be evil. In other words, his life was too hard. Fortunately, he really died this time. Why? Why did you treat him like this? You can vent your hatred on me. They're innocent. They're just children. Old Mrs. Mo cried uncontrollably. She never thought that the two children would die because of her. Children? Wasn't I a child too? Over the years, I've seen through a lot. I missed my family occasionally, and I would always think about how you killed my mom. I was furious and wanted to kill you. Do you know why my mother lived in her last days? My family was very poor, so poor that they couldn't even have a grain of rice. My mom wanted to borrow food, and she led me from door to door to beg for food. In that era, a boy born out of wedlock would be despised by everyone. My mom wore tattered hats every day and to ask for leftovers. Sometimes she had to fight with dogs for food. She was chased away countless times and looked down on countless times. But she always wanted to protect me and let me grow up healthily. Later, she couldn't take it anymore and hanged herself at home. Your grandchildren were easily killed by me and lost their lives. They didn't suffer at all. My mom suffered 100 times the pain and mental torture of an ordinary person, but my father didn't have any sympathy. When I came here and saw you, saw the incomparable glory, I came up with my mind to take revenge on you. Today I finally did it. Sheng Li seemed to have released all the resentment in his heart. Although there was tears in her eyes, he was really happy. When old Mrs. Mo heard this, she even felt more guilty and uneasy. She cried hoarsely and slowly fainted. Old Mrs. Mo! Old Mrs. Mo, wake up! Nanny Wu looked at old Mrs. Mo, who was silent in her arms and was a little scared. Hurry, we need to call a hospital. Call the ambulance. Nanny Wu shook old Mrs. Mo agitatedly, but she still didn't wake up. Sheng Li was stunned. He hurriedly took out his phone and called the ambulance. Old Mrs. Mo was still useless for him, so he couldn't let her die like this. In the hospital, old Mrs. Mo was hurriedly pushed into the operating theater. Sheng Li, why are you so ruthless? From the beginning to the end, old Mrs. Mo treated you as her biological son. These thoughts were just your own guesses. Aren't you letting her down by doing this? Nanny Wu beat Sheng Li. Sheng Li pushed her away impatiently. Don't blame me for everything. Well, Mrs. Mo is old and her health isn't good. From today onwards, your mission is to take good care of her and not to let her die. With that, he turned to leave. Nanny Wu squatted on the operating theater door to guard old Mrs. Mo. After more than an hour, the operating theater door gradually opened and old Mrs. Mo was pushed out. Doctor, what happened to old Mrs. Mo? Nanny Wu asked anxiously. Old Mrs. Mo had a heart disease to begin with. Today, her blood pressure suddenly increased, causing a myocardial infarction and a cerebral hemorrhage. Fortunately, she was sent over in time and her condition has temporarily stabilized. She'll be sent to the intensive care unit for further observation. During this period, we can't let old Mrs. Mo be agitated again. The danger hasn't been resolved and the intracranial pressure is too high. You should be prepared for a funeral. Nanny Wu fell to the ground when she heard the doctor seemed to be giving critical illness notice. She had followed old Mrs. Mo for nearly 30 years and could be considered her confidant. How was she going to live if old Mrs. Mo suddenly died? Jinrong's whereabouts were unknown too. If he came back and found that old Mrs. Mo was gone, he probably wouldn't be able to control his emotions. Old Mrs. Mo was pushed into the ICU and placed on a ventilator. Nanny Wu was guarding outside when her phone rang. It was Mo San. He sounded anxious on the phone. Nanny Wu, what happened? Why did I see old Mrs. Mo being pushed into a hospital? How is she now? Mo San asked anxiously. Old Mrs. Mo was sent to the ICU, and the doctor said that her life would be in danger at a time. Where is young Master Jinrong? If we knew about old Mrs. Mo's condition, he'd be heartbroken. Mo San had mixed feelings. He had tried various ways to find Jinrong, but to no avail. He didn't know what to do now that old Mrs. Mo was critically ill. He could only comfort Nanny Wu first. Chapter 505, First Encounter. Nanny Wu, take good care of old Mrs. Mo first. I will definitely find a young master. Mo San hung up after saying that. He searched for news of young master online and saw the news of a mission from Zero. Young master had always suspected that Zero was the young madam. Could there be something fishy going on now that Zero has announced a mission online? Mo San pretended to be a customer and signed up. He wanted to see if this was Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was very strict when it came to accepting missions. They wanted to confirm the other party's identity and illness. They wouldn't accept anyone with just a trace of suspicion. Based on his previous experience, Mo San had disguised himself very well and Ayn Rand didn't suspect anything. Soon, a hypnotherapy session was arranged in the afternoon and the location was chosen to be in a hotel. Mo San noticed a familiar scent as soon as he entered. He opened the door and saw someone familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was. Anna was in front of making some spices with her back facing him. She lowered her head and asked, "Sit on the sofa first, I'll treat you later." Mo San found the voice familiar. "Young madam," he asked skeptically. Ayn Rand suddenly stopped what she was doing and looked up at him. "You?" Mo San suddenly teared up. Through the veil he could see the shadows of Ayn Rand's face. "Young madam, you're really not dead. Where is young master?" He ran forward excitedly. He couldn't care less that Ayn Rand's identity, because it was important to find the young master. "What are you doing here?" Ayn Rand seemed to be a little panicked. Now, she wasn't expecting Mo San to appear. "Young madam, where's the young master? Is he still alive?" Well, Mrs. Mo was suddenly hospitalized with cerebral hemorrhage and is now in the intensive care unit. The doctor has issued a critical illness notice. If young master is still alive, let him go back and take a look. "What did you say? Grandma was hospitalized?" Anna was a little shocked. She originally wanted to wait for Jinrong to recover before letting him go back, so that old Mrs. Mo could see a complete grandson, but now she couldn't wait. "Young madam, Shang Li is preparing to sell the company. If the young master is still alive, let him come back quietly." Mo San seemed to have seen hope. "Jinrong is seriously injured and basically can't stand. He is actively doing rehabilitation. Tell old Mrs. Mo that you've seen Jinrong and that your grandson will visit her soon. This way, old Mrs. Mo might get better faster." "What about the young master? Was he seriously injured?" Mo San frowned and nodded. "His leg's bone fractured and he's been lying in bed for a long time, so it'll be difficult for his lower body to recover. He hasn't recovered the sensation in his legs yet, but don't worry, he's in good condition. I will resolve Shang Li's matter." Mo San was on the verge of tears. "Young madam, since you're not dead, what happened to the two corpses?" Anna stopped what she was doing and analyzed the incident meaningfully. It's very likely that they found the corpses of 2 homeless people so that no one would discover anything. When you go back, don't tell anyone that you saw me alive. Jinrong is seriously ill and he needs time to recuperate. Young madam, does young master know your identity? Mo-san asked curiously. Of course, I've been honest with him. Been taking care of him recently, Ayn smiled. Since young master is alright, I'm relieved. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about today's incident. I just hope that the young master can recover soon and come back to salvage the situation. If there's nothing else, hurry back. Don't say a word about today's incident to anyone. I'll definitely make Jinrong appear in public as soon as possible. Anna took a notice from her bag, which had an account number and password. She stuffed it into Mo-san's hand. This account contains all the company's money. Think of a way to create a shell company and buy the Mo Corporation from Sheng Li. Young madam, Sheng Li is a smart person. He might not sell it to me. Of course, I know that he won't sell it to you, but you can find someone to be the boss. Remember, the company's reputation must be great. This money is all we have. Since Sheng Li wants to sell the company, he must be very greedy. I have to think of a way to stall for time and eventually buy the company. Anon gave Mo-san a difficult mission. Although Mo-san felt pressured, he was willing to do this for his young master. After leaving the hotel, Mo-san was obviously in a good mood. At least he wasn't as melancholic as he was in the past few days. Anon hurriedly packed their things after Mo-san left. I can't stay here anymore. Mo-san saw the news and Sheng Li knows my identity. He might even be thinking of coming over. Skinny helped her carry the things as they left the hotel quickly. 5 minutes after they left, Sheng Li rushed over with his men and missed them. Damn it, she escaped again. Boss, do you think it's a trap? Anon hasn't been out for a long time. Will she easily post information online? The henchman was a little worried. Sheng Li didn't think so. In the past, Anon wouldn't have exposed her tracks so easily. She's either hiding at someone or she's really short on money. It seems like Jinrong is seriously injured. He glanced at the surveillance cameras around him. Bring out the surveillance cameras in this area and see if anyone approached this place. Bring out the surveillance cameras on the road as well. Sheng Li vowed to catch Anon. Fortunately, we ran fast, boss. Don't worry, I have details of all the surveillance cameras and blocked them. They won't be able to find anything. Skinny said. That might not be the case. Sheng Li's is a computer expert and will easily be him to recover the surveillance footage. She can't be sloppy. It has to be a clean job. Anon instructed him. Skinny nodded and rode back. In the hotel, Sheng Li and the others waited for a long time but couldn't find anything, so they returned disappointed.